It was a tense morning in the small, crowded courtroom. The sound of the gavel echoed through the room as Judge Thompson, an older white man with a stern expression, called the proceedings to order. Malik, a 25-year-old black man, sat in the defendant's chair, his back straight and his eyes fixed forward. His case had drawn attention in the town, a small community where everyone knew each other and not always in the best way. Malik had been accused of a minor crime, a misunderstanding, a mix-up with an old friend. But things had escalated quickly. This was not just about the accusation. It was about something deeper, something far uglier. The judge, known for his harsh demeanor, had already made it clear that he wasn't particularly fond of Malik being in his courtroom. The tension was thick, and Malik could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on him. Judge Thompson, flipping through his notes, looked over at Malik. The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Then, with a cold, dismissive tone, he spoke, his words cutting through the silence like a knife. "Well, Malik," he began, his gaze sharp and piercing. "You know, maybe instead of trying to cause trouble here, you should just go back to where you came from. Why don't you go back to Africa? Isn't that where you belong?" Malik's heart skipped a beat. The words struck him like a blow. He had dealt with racism before, growing up in places where he was one of the few people of color. But this was different. A judge, someone meant to uphold justice, had just uttered a blatantly racist comment in front of a room full of people. He could feel his stomach tighten, the heat rising in his chest. But instead of reacting impulsively, he took a deep breath, holding himself steady. He wouldn't let this slide. Not today. The few spectators in the room shifted uncomfortably, some exchanging awkward glances, others pretending they hadn't heard the comment. But Malik knew he couldn't let it pass. He stood up slowly, his voice steady but firm. "Your Honor," Malik said, his tone calm, yet there was a strength in it that filled the room. "I need you to understand something." The room went quiet as Malik paused, gathering his thoughts. His mind was racing, but he was determined to respond with grace. He wasn't going to let the judge's words define him. Not today. "You're right about one thing," Malik continued, his voice clear and measured. "I'm not from here originally. My family came from Ghana, but this is the country I was raised in. I've spent my life here, worked hard here, just like everyone else in this room. And so has my family. My father came here with nothing but a dream, and he worked 2 jobs just to make sure I had opportunities. My mother, she's a teacher, and she taught me that this country that you think is just yours, belongs to all of us." The judge shifted in his seat, clearly surprised by the calmness in Malik's voice. Malik didn't back down, though. He stood tall, looking directly at Judge Thompson. "You said I don't belong here. But you're wrong. I've worked for everything I have. My family has fought for a place here. My grandfather served in World War II. My parents fought in their own way, through hard work, respect, and education. We've helped build this country. And we're not going anywhere." There was a long pause. The courtroom was still, as if the words Malik had spoken had taken the air right out of the room. Even the judge seemed momentarily lost for words. The tension was palpable. Malik's statement hung in the air, a powerful reminder of the truth many people conveniently ignored. Malik's eyes never left Judge Thompson's, his gaze unwavering. "When you say that people like me don't belong here," he added, his voice strong, "you're forgetting something very important. We do belong. We've always belonged." For a moment, the judge didn't respond. His lips pressed tightly together, and his hands gripped the sides of his bench. The courtroom remained still, everyone waiting in tense silence. Malik could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on him, spectators, attorneys, even the court reporter. His words had hit harder than anyone had expected, and now, the judge seemed unsure of how to proceed. After a long pause, Judge Thompson finally cleared his throat, his voice now less forceful. "Well, Mr. Malik," he began, though his tone lacked the earlier conviction, "you've certainly made your case." The room was deathly quiet. Malik stood tall, his eyes never leaving the judge's face. The impact of his words had clearly shaken the judge's confidence. The man was silent for a moment longer before speaking again, his voice much less authoritative. I think we can drop this case, Judge Thompson muttered, almost reluctantly. Case dismissed. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Malik stood there for a brief moment, processing what he had just heard. It was over. The case was dismissed, and the room seemed to exhale in unison. Malik turned to leave the courtroom, his mind still racing. His attorney, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, gave him a brief nod of approval. That was incredible, the attorney said, his voice low. I don't think anyone saw that coming. You handled it with such poise. Malik smiled, though there was a tiredness in his eyes. Sometimes, grace is the only way to break through, he replied softly, the weight of the moment still settling over him. Outside the courtroom, as the sunlight hit his face, Malik felt a quiet sense of triumph. It wasn't just about winning the case. It was about confronting the ignorance and prejudice that had been thrown at him. It was about standing up for what was right, not only for himself, but for his family and everyone like him. He hadn't let the racism of the judge define him. Instead, he'd shown the strength and dignity that came from a lifetime of struggle, hard work, and perseverance. That evening, as Malik sat down to recount the day's events with his father's voice was calm, filled with pride. You did the right thing, son. You planted a seed, he said softly. Sometimes that's all we can do.